welcome to Psychic Holistic Spotlight. I'm your host, Josie Way, and tonight our co-host is Ken Demers. We are very pleased to have a guest, a friend of the show and a friend of mediums, and a medium himself, as well as an author, and he writes about it. He's starting his 4th book, and tonight we're going to talk about the first one that is going to have more material added to it in the 2nd book. And it talks about the signs and recognizing when someone is trying to get through to you from the other side. Most people don't notice it, but whether it's a flickering light that only flickers when you go by, you may not have an electric problem. You may have a spirit reaching out. So, what got you started with this?
Well, I think that all through my life I've been receiving some type of signs from the other side. And I think it's very interesting when I started to do research on it that there's probably like 10 to 20 million people that have received some type of sign from a deceased loved one. That's according to a Pew study, so it's quite prevalent. A lot of people are not sure if they're getting a sign or if it's their imagination. And this goes through all different cultures. So I decided to do a little bit more research, and then I decided to write the book about it and how the whole process works. It's a little bit more a little bit more detailed than you would imagine, but being a medium, I can tap into that information, so I thought it was best to put it in the book so the average person out there who's reading or having these contacts, they think, can see how other people are also having them. So there's some great stories in there too.
Do other cultures get different types of signs than Americans would because of their cultural beliefs? Or?
Right. Well, the signs are going to actually be connected to the person that has passed. So if it's a cultural thing, let's say someone liked to play bocce, okay, and they're in Italy or something like that, and the father was a champion or something, they may come through on a sign, something related to that.
Okay. Let's stop for a second and get some definitions. When you say signs, common signs would be?
Well, some of the most common signs, there are dozens of different signs of ways of our deceased loved ones to contact us once they have crossed over. Some of the most familiar ones are through our dreams, through electricity, sounds, smells is a huge one, perfume, or like when my father passed on, when he comes through, I smell cigar smoke. Okay, so that's a very powerful one. And then some people have animal signs, such as birds. A lot of people see cardinals around a deceased loved one, and especially in the winter. It's probably the red on the white or something that really grabs your attention to something, but that's very popular. So it depends on the individual how the sign is actually going to be presented. But they use all the major means.
The pennies from heaven.
Coins,
some coins are.
But so what I'm hearing is that the basic ones would be in many cultures. They would be universal.
They're universal.
The human race.
And what they're trying to do is they're trying to grab your attention between the individual and the individual receiving the sign that they're recognized. Okay, so they're going to try to pick something that you're going to recognize that's more personal between you and, let's say, one of your loved ones.
I'll give you a brief point. Justin lets me know he's around sometimes in different ways, but one of them is his birthday, the 17th. And so it was a favorite number for him. And when I see the 17th pop up and things are happening, I know he's near.
That's a great example. So it's important to realize that there's a whole process about when someone passes over, if a sign is even going to be given. And if it is, when, where, and how.
So if there was some particular type of item or thought that your grandmother used to do or say or phrase or whatever, what you're saying is that out of the blue and in out of context this phrase or word would be presented to you.
That could be one of the signs. Or a favorite song. And in the book that we have some stories, and my friend Nina, who I mentioned in the book, when her husband had passed, and we had first started going out, she had asked, is it all right if I start to see someone now? And is it okay? And because she had just started dating after her husband had passed a couple of years before that. And she was in the car and the radio was on, and I had asked her to go see a concert. And one of the, as soon as she finished saying about is it okay and stuff, and a Fleetwood Mac song came on, and that was the concert I was going to invite her to. And then right after it was a Matchbox 20 song, which happened to be Jay, her husband's favorite band. Okay, so she got them back to back, and then she went into the store. She came out about an hour and a half later, got in the car, turned the radio on. This time it's a Rob Thomas song, lead singer of Matchbox 20, and then the next song is another Fleetwood Mac song. So I mean, that's the type of connection.
Is Matchbox 20, is that a band?
Yes, it's a band.
Okay, never heard of them.
So, but that was his favorite band. And we were going to go to a Fleetwood Mac concert. So, and you usually don't hear them back-to-back songs of Matchbox 20 and Fleetwood Mac anyway, but she heard them twice. So that was her connection to let her know it's okay. So I took her to the concert. But that's just one particular sign about music and sounds. But like I said, like you mentioned, Ken, they can be particular with each individual. Like, let's say someone's relative was a baseball fanatic, okay? He might try to send a sign related to baseball to his son or his wife or something like that. He's not going to send something about gardening. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that, they try to figure that out. When someone passes over, there's an evaluation period, it's called. And at that point, they decide if a sign will be given, and like I said, when and how, the whole thing. And what they do is they'll go through your whole life, and the person that they're trying to send the sign to, they'll go through their life and they'll try to match up items that they think that you're going to catch and make that connection with your loved one on the other side.
Or just to know the spirit is close to you.
Right. So it's almost like walking down an aisle in a grocery store, okay? And you have your all your cornflakes, and you have all sorts of cookies, but instead they're all parts of your life. And so they're walking down the aisle and they're picking off, okay, honeymoon, brand new car, or the time that Dad fell over at the picnic. And they're grabbing all these items and they're going to say, all right, which one are we going to use to get our son to recognize that Dad's here? And then they go through the whole process and put together how the sign's going to be sent. And then it's up to us to recognize the sign. And the first thing to recognize is you have to believe that it's able to happen. In the second or third chapter in the book, it's called "No, You're Not Crazy," and actually that's the name of the book, the follow-up book to this. And I got that from my friend Nina, because when she got a lot of signs after her husband had passed, and she thought she was going crazy. So what happened is, the more people we talked to, widows and stuff like that, they thought they were making these signs up in their mind. And they thought that they were wishful thinking, and that they wanted this. But then when you see the research, and there are tens of millions of people, and how specific some of these signs are, they're not coincidence. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to write the book, to let people know, hey, it's okay. Other people are having these experiences, and actually it is your loved one.
I would think that a lot of the hesitation on the part of people is the negative connotation that the churches apply to this stuff, because they don't want people dealing with.
Well, I think, I've had people, when I do my mediumship readings, and also people, talking about the book, who say, I want to believe, but my religion won't allow me.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
And what I try to do is I try to tell them, it's not necessarily a religious thing, it's more of a spiritual thing. And your connection between you and your loved one is a spiritual connection. And so it doesn't even...
And it's really not part of the fundamentals of the religion, of Christian religion. The church made it so that they didn't want people making connection to other religions that were...
Well, what it comes down to is, if you loved one of your relatives or friends or co-workers and they pass over, your love is still there.
Yeah.
Their love is still there.
And it doesn't go away for a long, long
time. It doesn't
time.
go. And we know that there's a continuation of life as a medium. I've sat with a lot of people and proven that. So why can't they send a sign between the two of us? And the great thing is, like I said, millions of people get them, and they're familiar, and people talk about their stories, which is great, and that's why I put stories in the book, so other people feel comfortable talking about it. And if you have like two people talking about it at a table, chances are, there's a table of 6 or 7 people, you're having dinner or something like that, someone's going to say, hey, you know something? When my sister passed,
we had this happen.
This happened, it was strange. And deep down, they think, that's my connection. And then they realize, yeah, it actually was a connection. I was just afraid to accept it. So.
Last week, I was kind of surprised by this. Last week, I went downtown Providence, and I stopped at the PPAC in the afternoon for something. And I got talking. It was the day that the Long Island Medium was going to be there. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, how many tickets are left? I said, maybe I'll buy one. 3,000 tickets were sold out completely. So I was kind of surprised at how popular this subject was in Rhode Island.
Well, it's all across the country, actually, because I think in the last 12 to 15 years, we've seen TV shows.
Yeah.
And with the internet, people are more open-minded, or they're connected with more open-minded people. And a lot of times with these subjects, people would just talk about them like late at night, when the kids are in bed, or maybe on the back porch in the summer or something, spooky woo-woo things. But now it's much more in the open. It's in the media, it's in the entertainment industry. So it's easier for people to talk about their own experiences.
And it's not so spooky woo-woo anymore.
That's the thing.
It's more spiritual.
Right. When I was growing up and I was developing my mediumship, I didn't tell anyone. No one told anyone, because
they look at you funny.
You look at you funny, or you're a kid, and it's like, no one, is this really happening? But now people realize, hey, this stuff does happen. It happens to a lot of people. So I am not alone.
What I find is that once you're out of the closet a little bit, you'd be amazed at how many people come up to you, and people know that you're interested in this stuff. At how many people come up to you and talk to you about it.
It's an open book now. No pun intended, but people are not afraid to talk about it and their experiences, and it's really, actually, it's the norm for people to talk about it, and other people that really don't believe for whatever reasons, they're the ones that kind of like keep to themselves. But that's another reason why people, some people say, why can't I get a sign? And the reason is some people aren't ready for a sign. Either they're not emotionally ready, they're still in mourning. Religious reasons, they might not get a sign. It's a very subtle thing
that they may not recognize it even if they get it.
That's a possibility.
To me, I would think that would be a big issue.
That's another issue. I mean, some people might be open to it and they just don't recognize it. That's another reason I wrote the book, so just to give them some clues on how to recognize it. But some people just won't get it because it's not the right time, or because of religious purposes. They don't want to upset someone by trying to send a sign, and sometimes those signs can be confusing to the person that's here and bring more anguish and more sorrow, so that they'll back off. Or sometimes they'll send a sign to a relative to give it to the other person. That happens a lot
and
around
messages
around
mediums.
Funerals and around a trauma. They won't come directly to the people involved, but they'll go to a relative or a close friend who will relay the message afterwards.
Yeah.
They're very compassionate. I mean, obviously, and they know what they're doing.
Yeah, they don't want to upset too many people on the other side, on our side.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's like, we're very sensitive, and especially about the subject, and they don't want, they just don't want to jump out and say boo.
Yeah. And particularly at a time of a funeral, there's so much sensitivity and emotions around the whole thing that you have to tiptoe
Right.
You know, if you're the person that gets a message to give, you have to find a way to give it that it isn't going to intimidate.
Right. I mean,
Receiving it.
exactly. You might even delay it a few days, and that's the reason they do that, because, like you said, there's a lot of emotion going on at that time, and when they tap into us, they use all our systems, you know, our emotions and mental facilities and things like that. So we're already kind of like on edge. So sending a sign could really, it could have physical effects because it could just, you know, jaw people.
One of those things, I don't remember who it was now. His mother had died maybe a year before, and he had gone to a reader, and he got a message from his mother. And simple message, granite is so hot and cold. And the guy went dead pale. That day, he had selected a granite marker for his mother.
Right.
So a simple little thing, but it had tremendous impact on him.
Well, and that's getting a message through someone else. But imagine if, you know, you're driving down the road and you're thinking a friend, let's say Bill that had passed away, really close friend or something like that, and it's around his anniversary, and you're at a stop sign, you know, and all of a sudden a truck goes by and it says Bill's Family Delivery or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've actually had that happen to people where it's like the sign is like the size of a truck. And then, you know, then they,
And it's
then they
really
get
a sign.
it's a real sign on the side of a
written
truck.
sign.
It's like, you know, they have to accept it at that point. And they will try 2 or 3 different times if it doesn't get through because there's too much going on in someone's life.
Now, this is the written word. I've often heard pictures are worth 1,000 words. And I know you have a history of spiritual photographs. And we have people that they'll have their picture taken and their loved one will be on the front of their shirt that wasn't there. In other words, they had a plain shirt on.
Right.
And when they developed the picture, the guy's wife was on the front of his T-shirt. And I know you've taken other photographs of spirit.
Well, I think that in a case like that, I think they're trying to find any way to come through. And the reason they do want to come through is just basically to say hello. They want to say hi.
And I'm fine.
That I'm fine and that I made it. And that life does continue.
Right.
I mean, it's a simple message, but it's huge. And it's huge for us who live.
But I'm just trying to change hats here a little bit.
No, but
I want you to start talking about spirit photography just a touch.
Well, it's a little bit different because I think spirit photography, they might be using different types of energy, and some of it might even be forced. Now, a lot of these signs between the individuals on both sides are focused in on specific things, and there are certain rules they want to use. So they don't want really any type of renegade signs to come through because that could upset people, you know. So they try to follow the rules, but then some people are very pushy, and they'll just, you know, they're the ones that, you know, might just like show up in your mirror or something like that, or in a spirit photography or something like that, because they just want to come through so much.
But is that
they'll throw
becoming
themselves in
more
it.
common now? Because of the
common?
digital, because I think the digital cameras make it much easier for that to
I think
be affected?
I think we've gotten signs for thousands of years, and I think depending whatever the technology is at the time, it will be used. I mean, before we had all this electricity and technology and stuff like that, people got a lot of signs because they spent time at home reading and talking. Things were more quiet. They didn't have cell phones going off, so they got signs a lot more easy. It's tough to send a sign to someone when they're on Facebook or
watching
they're doing
television.
Twitter, and they got the TV on over there, the game's there, the dog's barking, they're on the phone. It's like, how do they get a sign through? With a truck, you know, a billboard or something like that. So, I mean, it's a double-edged sword there with the technology. It might be easier some ways, and other ways it can really throw a wrench into it.
Okay. What else we want to know about your book?
Dreams are the easiest way for them to come through to us because we're relaxed, we're into that state where we're not you know, hopefully not worrying about, you know, money and our jobs and the weather and things like that. So they'll come through in a dream, and you can usually tell if it's a true connection if the dream is very vivid.
Very vivid.
The colors are vivid, the emotions are vivid, and you can remember it the next day when you wake up, and you can remember it 6 months later, or 3 months, or even 5 years later. And if you've had a dream like that, then that's a really an original dream that's directly with the other side. And sometimes they won't talk, sometimes they will, sometimes they'll show you things. That depends on whatever language they want to use. But if you can remember that dream for a long time and it's very, very vivid, that's their connection.
What about clouds?
Some people, I think if you can get into a state of daydreaming, okay, that's how we kind of do.
Receptivity.
Yeah, we kind of do that with mediumship. It's kind of like an altered state. It's like daydreaming and stuff, but you're still actively here. If you can do that looking at clouds or even the ocean, that might, you know, quiet your mind enough that something comes through. But if you're looking at certain clouds and say, all right, that one looks like a bunny, that one looks like a cat, and that looks like Aunt Martha, I don't think that's going to work.
Well,
You know?
we're not supposed to tell stories so much, but what happened to me one time, I had a friend of mine with me, we're going to the Brockton Church, and we're going up Route 24. She'd never been to a spiritual church before. She says, oh, Ken, look at the ET up in the clouds. And I look up, and here's this massive cloud formation. There's a guy standing there that had to be 1,000 feet tall. He's standing with one hand on his hip, and the other hand he's got a trident, and he's got a funny crown or a funny shaped head. And we're talking about it, and we're driving along, and we go to church. They do the healing, they do the inspirational talk, and they do the message service. And Vereen Eldridge was the medium. And she says, oh, I have an ET here with you. He says, you saw me in the clouds today. That's kind of a strong sign.
That is a strong sign.
It's all linked up
but
together.
It's all linked up together. The
Yeah.
first time that lady had been to
He was
that
my
type of
father
service.
in another lifetime.
Okay, so then you made the connection. See, that would be different than just, you know,
He
sitting there
brought a
looking
message
for.
from my
Yeah.
mother, and you know.
But that's the
whole
thing,
bit.
you got the connection, the message at the service too. So that builds in there, and they got you to think about that.
Yeah, I
You know something?
didn't give it too much thought until the message part of it came in.
And the thing is, there could have been two people on the street looking up, and it wouldn't have looked like that at all.
Oh, you could see his facial features,
Right. You know what I mean?
hands,
It was
Yeah.
specific. It was
But
specific for you.
You perceived it. What I love that's happened in my life is that occasionally, when I'm feeling very down, I will find a piece of jewelry that has an angel on it, a coin or something like that. And it's sitting at my car, will be telling me I'm being watched over, that I'm not alone, and that I'm not crazy with the things that I experience.
And I think there are signs that are ongoing. Okay, like I get like sequential numbers. Some people might have that. It might be a 222. You know, you wake up in the morning and it's 3:33. You know, and then later on that day, you're running an errand and it's like, oh my God, am I late? And you look at the clock and it's 3:33. And then you go to bed that night and it's like, oh, did I miss the news? And it's 11:11. So it's like I say, thank you. I get it. And that just reminds me that we are all connected.
Yeah.
And so I always thank Spirit for like that. But some people do get messages. When people pass, certain times on their clock, you know, or the alarm will go off. You know, like I said, there's some great stories in the book, and with people explaining, like let's say a couple's daughter is getting married, and the grandmother couldn't be there or something, and then on the wedding day, they'll get a message and stuff. So that they love. We know as mediums that deceased loved ones love to be around us during special occasions. So
Yes.
that's a good time. People say, when will I get it? If you're looking for it all the time, everywhere, it's going to be very difficult to get
You'll
it to
miss
you.
it.
You'll miss it.
Well, you got to be receptive in the
You
bottom
have
line.
to be open, but you don't
And observe
necessarily
it.
have to be like over-observant. You know what I mean? Just because, you know,
Go on with your life, but just be aware when
because
something's
they're
out of
working
place.
on it, they'll find a way to get it to you. But around special occasions, like when people pass, birthdays, holidays, like I said, weddings or births or something like that, they might just tap in just to say, hello, I am here experiencing this great event with you, you know? So everyone should keep an eye open around those times
The
too.
love continues past.
And another thing is, don't put any expectations on it. A lot of times people say, oh, I want a sign. I want a sign. Grandma, Mom, send me a sign. But don't do it next Tuesday because I'm going on vacation. And when I come back, I got to work overtime, so I can't do it on that. No expectations, because people will do that.
All limitations.
You know what I mean? Because then all of a sudden they're boxing things in, and it's like, no, you just got to ask for it in a prayer, or just when you talk to your loved one at night or whenever, and then just let it go. They'll find a way.
Music is, as you spoke of before, is one of the strongest ones that opened to me, you know, when I lost someone.
Yeah, it's a very popular.
What a difference.
Yeah,
You know,
because it hits you very, music hits you at a certain level that it's very emotional. So when they tap into something like that, they already have you kind of tuned in. You know, electricity's a little bit more, you know, right. When my mom came through, she used to blink lights.
Yeah.
And then it's in the book, and then after a while, you know, I realized it was her and stuff. And after a couple of weeks and stuff, I said, you know, the light would blink when she was around. I said, listen, Mom, I know it's you blinking the lights, but you got to really let me know, because otherwise I got to hire an electrician. I'm afraid the house is going to burn down. And I said, it's going to cost me $100 or something. As soon as I finished saying that, the particular light blinked 5 times, and then it stopped, and it never blinked again. I said, thanks, Mom. Thanks.
That's interesting.
I said, thanks for saving me $100. You know, and thanks, I don't have to, you know, worry about the house burning down.
April Sheehan was down the Medium College at Camp Bluebell, whatever it is, in Niantic, Connecticut. And she was telling me about, she had been playing with batteries or flashlights.
Right.
And she had half a dozen flashlights, and she would ask a question, and the damn flashlights would blink on and off.
Well, I mean, they're good, very good with electricity.
Yeah.
And like I said, sounds. Well, sounds is
something was
vibration.
making them blink on and off, that's why.
Yeah,
From
it
the
wasn't
other
her,
side.
it wasn't me, and we were the only 2 people.
Live people there.
But scents are very important too with smells.
Yes.
People will say, listen, I just smell this perfume, or I just smell, you know, cigarettes or something like that, and there's no one around that smokes or something like that.
When we, just before we came in here tonight, half an hour ago, I'm standing in the control room waiting for us to get going, and it fills up with the scent of like a massage oil, a grape oil, or like,
Right.
you know, well, I would call it massage oil. Nobody getting a massage in there.
Right.
So where did that come from?
Well, you said you had a background in.
Yeah, I'd been to massage school and that, but I'm just saying that that's a half an hour ago it happened.
Right. Well, the thing is, you're open to it, and you have to find out how that connection is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to spend a few minutes thinking about it, and you'll get oh, that's what that was.
In the follow-up book to that, which I'm writing now, and it should be out sometime in May or June, I go into more detail on how people can actually start to acquire some of the skills of being more open to getting a sign, being more aware of certain things of their loved ones or people around them, so they make the connection a lot quicker.
What's the difference between that and developing mediumship?
It's similar to it's similar in the process, but it's more for a layman's way of, for people that don't want to get really into.
I guess it would come down to intent.
It's focus and awareness. It's focus
I
and
mean, the
awareness.
intent of seeing a sign versus the intent of hearing somebody talk to you.
Well, it's a
which
big
might
leap.
scare
That's
them.
kind of a big leap there.
I
but,
mean, people
Yeah.
get spooked, maybe.
well, that's another thing too. Yeah, they don't want to scare people, so they're just a little simple sign is.
Yeah, I need to say we're coming down to a minute, and I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for co-hosting. I want to thank our audience for coming to join us and spend some time with us. Please come back. Now, if there's one thing only that you would like everybody to know about spirit messages and signs.
That life goes on, it continues. Your loved ones are in a good place, they're secure, and don't be afraid if they try to connect with you, just to say hello. Is there anyone home?
Hello, Anyone Home by Joe Higgins. And I guess I can go on that big computer company and find it, huh?
Yeah, you can get on Amazon if you want. On my website, joehiggins.com.
Now, if we still got a minute or so.
No, we don't.
We don't.
Okay. We're looking for volunteers.
Anyone who wants to volunteer on a TV show.